That day, the town of Tahara suddenly became haunted and chaotic. A frantic 911 call comes in from a neighbor who heard gunshots, but no one has shown up all day. When police arrive, they find blood all over the house, but no bodies inside. The only person present is a young man with bloody hands and a horrifying story. He says his family is dead, but the bodies moved on their own. So what is the truth? And what really happened in that house? Have you ever heard a strange noise in the middle of the night? A noise that makes your skin crawl, you don't know where it's coming from, but somehow, you know something's wrong. On the evening of October 13, 2024, in Tahara, New Mexico, a distressed 911 call came in. The caller was a man who lived in the area, and he was in a panic. "I heard a lot of gunshots. 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row. Then, a moment later, one last shot. And, no one showed up. No one said anything." The house next door was eerily silent. The man owned the house, but had rented it to a family for years. They were nice people who often helped him with his daily chores. But today, things weren't normal. "They always come over here to help me work on the farm. But today, no one showed up. All 4 of their cars were parked in front of the house. But the door was still closed. No movement. I was worried. What had happened to them? Are they in danger? The police can't wait any longer. A patrol team is immediately dispatched to the scene. And when they arrive, they have no idea that they are about to enter a real nightmare. What will the police find inside the house? A murder? An unprecedented mystery? Prepare yourself, because this story will make you shiver. The police approached the house on high alert. No one knew what was waiting for them inside. What were the gunshots the neighbors heard? Who fired the shots? And who was shot? The door suddenly opened. A young man stepped out, his hands covered in blood. Adley, the son of the family in this house, stared straight at the officers with a blank gaze. He didn't scream, he didn't run, he just stood there, eerily calm. The police quickly asked him to put his hands up, but instead of panicking or resisting, Adley calmly complied, then said, "Did you see them?" An officer frowned. "Who?" "My parents, my sister. They attacked me. I had to. But they didn't die. They got up. They healed themselves." The words sent shivers down the officers' spines. A person who had been shot could still get up. The police immediately entered the house. And what they saw inside could not be explained by reason. Blood was everywhere. Dried bloodstains, drops of fresh blood, but no bodies. The big question is, if Adley killed his family, where did they go? So what is the truth? Are Adley's words just hallucinations, or is there something more horrifying? The police searched the house with all their might. They checked every room, turned over every piece of cloth, opened every door. But there was no body. Only blood. An officer muttered, "Impossible. If someone was shot here, the body couldn't have disappeared." But just then, one of the policemen went out to the backyard and saw something that made him hold his breath. A trail of tracks stretched across the ground. Blood. It led them to a corner of the garden, where 3 bodies lay limp on the grass. Adley's father, mother, sister. They had finally been found. But when an officer bent down to check, his face suddenly changed color. The bodies were still moving slightly. White foam was coming out of their mouths, and their fingers were twitching weakly. But, they were dead, weren't they? Adley, from inside the police car, observed everything. And then, he smiled faintly. "They'll wake up, you just don't believe it." The police looked at each other. No one said a word. But inside them, an invisible fear was slowly rising. So, what is this? A murder? something even more horrifying. Prepare yourself, because the truth behind it is darker than you can imagine. Outside the house covered in blood, 3 bodies lay motionless on the ground, but the strange thing was that their bodies still had weak reflexes. The police stood in a circle, no one dared to get too close. Everyone felt that something was wrong. An officer sat down to check, then immediately pulled his hand back. "They're still moving." The others turned to look at Adley. But contrary to their horror, he only smiled slightly. "They're not dead. I told you. They'll get up again." Adley's calm voice made the listener shiver even more than the scene before their eyes. An officer gritted his teeth, trying to keep his voice calm. "What did you do to them? Why do you say that?" Adley looked straight into his eyes, without hesitation. "I tried to kill them. More than once. But they kept coming back. They got up, as if nothing had happened. I don't know what they were. But they weren't normal people anymore." Those words were embedded in the officers' minds, making them unable to deny that this matter was not as simple as they thought. When the medical staff checked, they confirmed that all 3 victims were completely dead. They were carried onto stretchers, ready to be sent for forensic examination. The police thought it was over. But as soon as the bodies were placed on stretchers, something terrible happened. Imagine, you're standing in the middle of the night, thinking it's all over, that death is the end of everything. But then, one of the bodies suddenly opens its eyes. A paramedic screams, backing away in panic. The entire police team draws their guns, ready to fire at any moment. But before they can do anything, the eyes close again. Everything goes quiet again. A normal death, or something even more terrifying. Adley still sits there, smiling faintly. "They're not done yet. I told you so. Ask yourself, what's really going on here? And, is it really over? What do you think about this? Could this just be a hallucination, or a sign of something more terrifying?" Don't take your eyes off this story, because the next part is even scarier than you thought. The police couldn't understand Adley. He didn't react like a typical murderer. There was no guilt. No fear. No attempt to justify himself. He just sat there, smiling, his eyes staring blankly at the detective. "Tell me, Adley. What happened?" He tilted his head, as if considering the question. "Have you ever seen anyone die?" The detective tightened his grip on the pen. "I've seen more murders than you can imagine. And now I'm trying to figure out why you killed your family." Adley chuckled, then said in a voice that was frighteningly calm. "I didn't kill them. They were already dead." "Before?" the detective repeated, feeling a chill run down his spine. "Yes. They died at 9:30. I'm sure of it. But then, they came back. And they weren't the same." Outside the interrogation room, an officer watched through the glass. A strange feeling suddenly rose in his heart. Adley wasn't a panicker. He wasn't crazy. He really believed what he was saying. But who could believe those words? "I tried to kill them. I shot them. I stabbed them. But you see, they kept coming back." The detective took a deep breath, trying to get control of the situation. "Are you on drugs, Adley? Did someone force you to do this?" For the first time, Adley's lifeless eyes lit up a little. He looked straight at the detective, his voice almost a whisper. "You don't understand. But soon, you will hear them." A shiver ran through the detective's body. He felt something was wrong. And just then, a noise rang out in the hallway. An officer ran into the control room, his face pale. "We have a problem. 3 bodies have just disappeared from the autopsy room." The coroners all claimed that they had sealed the bodies carefully, with no signs of intrusion. So, who took them? And more importantly, did they disappear on their own? At this point, all suspicion fell on Adley. But when the police returned to the interrogation room, he was no longer the same. He sat there calmly, not surprised, not showing any fear. And when the detective entered, Adley just looked up, then smiled slightly. "I warned you, they'll be back." His words were like a curse that haunted the minds of those present that day. After this case, Adley was detained to await trial. Some experts said he had severe paranoia, others suspected that he knew more than he was telling. But the most terrifying thing was that the bodies of Adley's parents and sister were never found. No one knows where they went, who took them, or if they really died. The case was closed for lack of evidence, but it will forever be one of the most terrifying stories in the history of Tahara. And perhaps, the truth still lurks, somewhere out there. This story leaves more questions than answers. It makes us wonder. Can the human mind make us believe things that are not true? Or are there things that are beyond the understanding of science? Whether you believe Adley's testimony or not, one thing is for sure, we still don't understand everything about this world. Always be on your guard, because things that seem impossible may actually exist around us. If you like mysterious stories like this, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more stories. And what do you think? Do you believe Adley's words? Leave a comment to discuss this mystery together.